Hey everyone, our guest today is Ryan Pollock, Director of Product Marketing at Together.ai. Ryan has a rich history in technical product and growth marketing, with experience spanning tech powerhouses like Google, Oracle, Mozilla, and cloud leaders like DigitalOcean and Vulture. Together AI helps businesses train, fine tune, and run inference models on AI models, offering research driven capability and scalability. So Ryan focuses on driving adoption of this cutting-edge enterprise AI solutions that encompass the entire AI lifecycle. Ryan, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Great. So let's get into the deep dive into the questions. You've
All right.
worked in product marketing across companies like Google, Mozilla, and startups, right? Like Vulture.
Yeah.
So how do you think product marketing has evolved over the years, and how is it different from big tech versus smaller companies?
Yeah. I'll try to address both of those and how has it evolved over the years. I'll start with that. Um, Admittedly, I think product marketing, people think about it very differently depending on the role they're in, the company they're in. Um, and I think that it's changed in that. Maybe some people at this point think it's more sales enablement. There's differences of opinion. I honestly still think of it as sort of the 4 Ps of marketing: establishing what is your product, how do you price it, how do you place and distribute it, and of course the part that's kind of most synonymous with marketing: how do you promote it, how do you drive adoption. And I think it's just changed in that some of the opinions maybe have evolved, and lots of different perspectives on that. And as far as sort of the differences between what it's like in sort of a big versus a smaller company, working at Google versus working at something that's more of a startup like Together AI or a DigitalOcean or a Vulture. I think the biggest difference is that, and I was at Google basically from 2006 to 2015. A big difference there was we were at a point where we were just rapidly expanding the product portfolio, for the most part, keeping things under the Google brand, obviously having incredible momentum on the consumer business and on the ad business, and really just kind of like trying to introduce a bunch of new products that people would want. Admittedly, like that was comparatively easy, I would say, as compared with like being in a startup. And by the way, I was at a startup that got bought by Google. That's how I wound up joining the company. And in a startup, it's honestly quite a bit harder to get those customers. From going from 0 to 1, as they say, it's about getting product market fit, and sort of scaling that in more of a startup environment is okay. So once you've got some traction, then ultimately how do you grow? How do you scale? So I think that there's just a lot more to figure out when you're in that kind of startup situation or growing. I'm forgetting the phrase of often referred to a company that's got traction and then growing. So anyhow, there's just differences. You tend to have higher impact. Every little thing you do in a giant company has massive impact. Whereas in a smaller company, you don't necessarily reach as many people, but a lot of the work is in some ways more strategic and interesting.
Right. And there, right? Like if someone was to ask you, hey, how would product marketing evolve from 1 to 10,
Yeah.
10 to 50, and 50 to 100? Right?
Yeah. So going back to sort of what I said,
Yeah.
that 4 Ps, I think especially in that, going from 0 to 1 million or something in that area, product marketing, product management, the roles get all the more fused. It really is so important that you get the product right.
Yep.
The YC phrase, make something people want.
Yeah.
That I view as sort of like that's where product marketing begins, as far as I'm concerned. Figuring that out. And once you get something that's at least 80% right, then you worry all the more about pricing, being pricing it at a point that people will pay. How are you faring? How does your pricing compare to your competition? The placement aspect, the distribution, understanding your distribution channels. Obviously, when it comes to internet businesses, we all sort of know you put up a website. There's more sophisticated strategies beyond that, thinking through channel partnerships, potentially, just overall partner strategy, and do you have some sort of reseller program or anything of that nature? And then as you get into those tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars or what have you, it really is just pouring gasoline on the fire.
Yep. And Ryan, so if you were to take like some examples around it, like
Yeah.
what were some of the things you guys did which worked for you?
I think you said Vulture. You broke up for a second there.
Yeah, like Vulture, like a startup,
Yeah.
right? Or Together.ai.
So Vulture and I was also at DigitalOcean before that, direct competitors. And both companies had, I would say, similar playbooks for a long time. In that, both companies investing in things like community, DigitalOcean especially, community and educational content as part of that. DigitalOcean is certainly sort of famous in the developer community for a lot of its tutorials. Vulture had a smaller collection on that front, but those tutorials from both companies ranking highly in Google search results over the years, investing in things like referral programs, and both companies really being successful at driving self-service. And having spent time in both of these companies, I would say some of the areas where, when I was at Vulture, basically from 2021 until sometime in 2023, at Vulture we were admittedly trying to do more ABM, account-based marketing and sales type stuff, having a certain level of success with that as we got into the cloud GPU space. While I was there, I worked very closely with NVIDIA to launch the company's cloud GPU service. And this was I think we did it in May 2022, so that would have been like 5 months before ChatGPT came out. And just with that sort of evolution going from CPU-based computing to GPU-based computing, that creating new kinds of use cases, new kinds of customers, and therefore marketing and sales programs that were more account-based. And certainly a lot of that's honestly continuing now that I'm at Together AI.
Sure. And so you mentioned, right, like you used referral programs, account-based marketing as things evolved. Can you give us some more examples of how you did that? Like, what were the referral programs like? What did they look like? What did the ABM look like? What were the things you focused on? How did you do the research?
Yeah, so in the case of DigitalOcean and Vulture, as far as the referral programs, those were just incentivized based, basically affiliate programs, allowing customers to post a link, to try the platform, get X dollars, $25 or whatever in free credit on the platforms, and then in return, the person who did that referral also got either credit on the platform or potentially cash. So that was a very sort of PLG, bottoms up, developer first way to just get people trying the platform, and certainly content creators, people writing blogs, and as YouTube obviously completely mushroomed, making videos, being able to drop a link in a description and say go try this example, and do it on DigitalOcean or Vulture. At both companies, those referral programs honestly drove like pretty significant sign up volumes and that sort of thing.
And was there any community building involved in this whole process?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, like for DigitalOcean especially, that is the company that invested a great deal in community. It's probably still like a prominent part of the DigitalOcean website. And years ago at this point, DigitalOcean was doing things like discussion forums, and obviously there was things like Stack Overflow happening. But DigitalOcean doing events, Hacktoberfest is one that's pretty well known, where it was one of the key evangelizers of open source software. So in doing meetups and that sort of thing. So really trying to build a community around the company, and I think that is and was key to DigitalOcean's success.
Right. And the second thing you mentioned was ABM, right?
Yeah.
So can you just tell us how ABM can be scaled, how ABM should be started, right? Like, just what are the key pointers on doing ABM well?
Yeah. I mean, as far as ABM is concerned, obviously what it starts with is identifying the specific companies, the accounts that are a good fit for your product. And of the companies that I've been at, and me being at Together AI now, and Vulture, DigitalOcean, and so on, understanding your ideal customer profile, and then identifying the companies that fit that, the personas, the job titles within them that fit that, and the use cases for your product. As I'm at Together AI now, we do a few things. First off, we're sort of an AI centric, I call it a super cloud or cloud platform, where we're aggregating GPUs from a number of providers. We're investing in our own as well. And we're taking all these GPUs, we're offering then atop that our inference and fine tuning APIs. And we also basically have sort of a turbocharged GPU cluster product. We have some innovations from our research team, where we're able to offer a training stack and software kernels that just make this massive scale training a lot faster, and therefore quite a bit less expensive to do than if you're using sort of just commodity GPU clusters. So that's what we do together. And for those different sort of product lines of inference and fine tuning and GPU clusters, we certainly have in mind different kinds of customers and companies and use cases. On the GPU cluster front, like it's sort of more obvious that we often work with companies that are training large models that need thousands or hundreds of GPUs to build, say, a video generation model, like one of our customers, Pico Labs. So for us, knowing that use case of supporting large model training, obviously there's a set of venture-backed companies that are focused on that. There's also big companies that have reasons to do that sort of thing. And then on the inference side, I can elaborate there if you're curious, but we offer Llama, for example, and definitely see a number of companies that are looking at large language models and have all sorts of use cases on that front.
Right. And if someone was to ask you, right, like, can you suggest a GTM strategy or framework which has, in your experience, led to exponential growth, right, in a competitive space? Like,
Yeah.
this is getting competitive. So how is there a strategy or a framework which has worked for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a former engineer, so I'll state that. Still have a great deal of empathy for engineers. Most of my best friends are engineers, and I believe so strongly that engineers, that technical people, are the key decision makers in adopting a sort of, say, cloud platform or something along those lines. I like to build the product so that those people can start dabbling with it, experiment, try building things, learn how to do things, because that's, especially as an engineer, that's what so many people want to do. They want to get their hands dirty. They don't necessarily want to talk to a salesperson if they can avoid it. Let's just be honest. So I love to work on products that have that sort of self-service ability to get started, get going. But then at the same time, like I think there is a point that someone gets more serious. They want to be able to talk to a human being. We knock on wood that's sort of going to continue in some way. And just having that ability to satisfy both desires, to do things on your own, to talk to someone when you want it, of the sort of cloud infrastructure providers I've been working at, that's pretty typical.
Right. And so, like you mentioned, right, like someone, like a human being there. Now we are seeing AI actually taking that role, saying, hey, you want to talk to somebody, it'll be a human like AI avatar. Where do you see that going? Do you think that'll become reality in the next year, 2 years?
The exact timeline is fuzzy.
Right.
I work at an AI infrastructure company, and very much, I mean, already the way I do my job is already changed dramatically. Um,
Can you elaborate on that? Like, how has that changed?
I mean, honestly, prior to starting it together, I was doing consulting under my own sort of PMM AI consultancy. Um, and for me, it's just been this symbiosis where I have my AI tools that I use, and they are very much at this point an extension of my brain. Um, and I'm like a Beatles fan or whatever, and an analogy I sort of make is if I'm Paul McCartney, I work with AI as though it's 1,000 John Lennons. So it's, for me, it's absolutely given me superpowers and an ability to go from idea. I product marketing, messaging is so fundamental. Writing blog posts and so on. And I am able to ingest context and deeply technical content a lot of times, remix it, ultimately shape it the way it needs to be shaped. So for me, AI has been a tremendous accelerant. Um, and yeah, as far as back to sort of the sales type question marks, I think honestly, particularly in sort of these developer tools, developer platform type products, where there is such a desire to work, to experiment, and do that, without having to go through, what I saw someone recently label as BS. I think it's going to be appealing for the customer, and I generally expect that for the companies that are appealing to developers, embracing generative AI solutions and so on that enable all the more self-service for those who want it, I think that'll be an advantage. But yeah, I for one certainly hope that humans are not entirely displaced here.
Right. And Ryan, like moving to like the PLG motion, which you mentioned, right? There are a lot of people who will sign up for free trials, and one of the biggest questions is, how do you convert free to paid?
Yeah.
Right? Are you involved in that in any way, in any of the, like with Together right now, or in any of the companies in the past? And what were some of the strategies you deployed to make that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, of course, something I've been involved in. Basically any product I've worked on that has had that self-serve to paid flow, and there's been a number at this point. What I commonly like to do in those situations is of course institute some processes to just identify among those free trials which ones actually look promising. I mean, you can do super simple things of just looking at the email addresses that are signing up and checking the domain name. Of course, you hope to see that some customers actually like really take to using the platform whenever that happens, like, it's worth reaching out at the very least, and try to get to know the person or the team on the other end of that, because usually when you do that, you'll I mean, in selling things like infrastructure as a service, the provider, we don't necessarily know what that company is doing exactly. You're not supposed to know exactly. Of course, you can look at what that company is building overall, but otherwise, you don't have insight into that exact workload. So it's always good for a company to get to know their customers, and in so doing, very often you build that relationship, and you ultimately can sell more, just by getting to engage with that person on the other end. So summing that up, just making sure that you're following up with your customers that have potential.
Right. But that's one thing, right? Like following up with them. But like if you are a fast growing PLG company, you follow up with them, like should we follow up over emails, like in on platform? How do you upsell? Like how do
Yeah,
you get
I mean, obviously, there's email is the most straightforward. You can do things in the UI, posting messages there of, asking if they'd like to talk to the team or something along those lines. But the last thing you want to do as a provider is come across as being overly aggressive
Sure.
and ultimately turning someone off.
Right. Right. And what are some of your favorite AI tools which you use today?
Yeah. So, admittedly, I use ChatGPT a lot. I also feel like it together, of course, like we are competing with OpenAI on the platform side of things. We're together AI. We're not a consumer company. OpenAI, I think, is, for me, when I look at the company, it's deja vu from the time I was at Google, having both the consumer and sort of platform side, and who knows, maybe I'll get into advertising at some point. So I do use ChatGPT as a sort of consumer a lot. And beyond that, I'm experimenting, of course, with all the other foundation models, including our own that we offer from Together, and the models that we have for partners like Meta with Llama. So I use that. I use, we offer Flux, which is a newer image generation model from the makers of Stable Diffusion. And honestly, I'm like concepting some creative. I've been doing that for weeks now, and I am generating some images, some things like llamas. You can imagine different kinds of advertising in the forms that all can take. And just as I've been doing that, my workflows have been along the lines of, I have some ideas, I have some very specific messaging and creative direction, and I've been working with AI and some creative design partners to go from sort of the visions I've had in my head to things that I hope we can plaster around San Francisco and beyond. So a lot of collaboration with AI, as I said, the 1,000 John Lennons.
Right. And we have a question from Luxon here. He's like, should there be predefined? This is like on the morality of AI, I guess. Right? Should there be predefined limits of AI usage for individuals versus big organizations? Or do you think the technology should be open for everyone to explore its full potential while keeping the potential risks in mind?
Yeah, that is a big difficult question. In some ways, I regret that it's. I feel like it already is sort of out of our hands. And that is just the nature of what this technology is capable of. I certainly hope that world leaders can, if the absolute worst case scenarios, we've all seen the movies. I would hope that enough world leaders can align on some things to try to keep this from those absolute nightmare scenarios. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not an AI safety expert. Obviously, there's some very smart people thinking about these issues. But the raw ingredients here are accessible. There's just they're accessible. There's obviously a great deal of cost in building models, but it is inevitable that very powerful things are out there.
So you basically are, it seems like you're in the camp of saying we should put some restrictions. It's getting out of hand.
Well, I think that in a perfect world, somehow there would be, quote, the right restrictions. I don't even know what those are. I don't think anybody knows what they are. And certainly you have some people on one end of the spectrum of like, no restriction, just let this all go. And and the other end is like, let's regulate this thing heavily, and that's the other end of it. I think that, I mean, my perspective is probably that like maybe we'll see some sort of, I forget if it's the Geneva Accord or whatever it is. But obviously over-regulating it has its perils. And anyhow, I'm generally a centrist type person, and I would hope we can find the middle ground, but I think realize it's going to be hard.
Right. We're coming to the end, Ryan. One final question: when you're building your team, what are you looking for in hires? And if someone wants to get into product marketing in this AI world, what will be your advice for them, saying, hey, this is what I would look at if I'm hiring you?
Yeah. I mean, what I look for, particularly in a product that is ultimately used by a developer or a technical person, I certainly like to see that kind of background. I believe very strongly in the importance of customer empathy, that ability to put yourself in the shoes of the customer. So I like finding people when marketing technical products, finding people that have held those kinds of engineering roles or studied engineering, that sort of thing. That's what I often like to see. But then something that I also really like being able to see is this ability to go from that down in the dirty tech to 30,000 foot view of, just what is your strategy? What do you say? What do you do to actually drive adoption? Some elements of creativity. Some people I know are so great at the tech. They're so great with data and numbers. But when it comes to just figuring out, well, what are the buttons I should actually be pressing? Can you show me that you know what buttons to press, and that even just beyond the button pressing, like, well, when you push that button, how exactly does it deploy?
Yeah.
So I'm speaking at a sort of abstract level, but I want someone that can go, very very generalist kind of skill set, but then can go deep where they need to.
Interesting. Got it. No, that makes a ton of sense. Thank you so much, Ryan. It was a pleasure.
All right. Thank you for having me. That was fun.
Yeah. Cheers, mate.
All right.